Bonus Vlog, June 6, 2016. We're getting Superman in Supergirl. Yay, finally. This is fantastic, exciting news, and I think a really smart way for Berlanti to open the second season of Supergirl over on the other networks. So as we know, Supergirl is moving to the CW. It didn't get the ratings that NBC was hoping, and it was too expensive to produce, so they canceled it, and the CW snatched it up. And there's a lot of concern that they're not going to have anything like the budget that they, we know that the budget is going to have to get cut naturally because the CW couldn't afford it in the first place. And there are concerns that the production values aren't going to be nearly as good. There's been a question as to whether or not Calista Flockhart is going to be able to continue to be in the show regularly, and she's been in negotiations, her contract, so she might be a regular, or it sounds like she's definitely still going to be in the show, but she may still be in every episode regular, and she may be just a recurring character now. So there are things that are up in the air, but it's really smart of Berlanti and his team to go ahead and bring Superman in. And the report is that he's supposed to be in the first 2 episodes of the season. So I think that this is clearly a tactic to, and a good one, a smart one, to try to bring folks that were watching the show on NBC, make sure that they come over with the show to the CW. And I'm sure a lot of people will. But with the concerns about budgetary constraints and stuff, I could see some people dropping off thinking, well, I like NBC and I like network shows, and it was easier to, I took the idea of the show more seriously on a network that has a better track record. And some people, you say CW, they kind of cringe, and so they don't want to watch a show on that network, and they equate it with those other superhero shows that perhaps they don't like or don't take seriously. And I think a lot of people probably didn't realize that Supergirl was produced by some of the same people that are working on the CW shows, and for my money, the production values and the writing generally were above those of the shows on the CW, even including the first season of The Flash. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that, and so it's understandable that you'd need to come up with some flashy, exciting things to try to bring some people over to that show. And I don't think that that is necessarily too gimmicky of a thing, assuming that their Superman is, consistent with the characterization of the background Superman that we had with that show. It's also kind of a risky move, I think, because if their Superman is unlikable, that could obviously really hurt their show, or if people just don't buy the characterization. I've been of two minds about this, because that show has given us, like I said, this background Superman where it's the very traditional, larger-than-life, kind of does no wrong, really, really optimistic kind of Superman. And we can all sort of imagine that Superman for ourselves, be it the Christopher Reeve Superman or some version of the comic book version. And this is something I have praised that show for. It very much seems to understand the idea of Superman and who he is, and that is embodied very much in their Supergirl. Also, of course, this notion that the show is supposed to be focused on its titular protagonist, that it's about Supergirl and not about Superman, so you leave him in the background and don't actually show him, and we can kind of imagine him for ourselves. And if they manage to nail his ideology and what he stands for, then he's universal. Everybody will watch that show and say, Superman's there, and I know it's really Superman, even though I don't get to see him. The problem I had with it more was just that they kept involving Superman in stories when we couldn't actually see him, and it got kind of laughable unintentionally, especially toward the end, when he's written out so that you have this big global catastrophe, and he's not there for it, so that Supergirl has to deal with it. He's off-world, and then 5 minutes later you bring him back just to be mind controlled, and then you've got that scene where he's lying around at the facility, and you just see his legs, and it was hilarious. I don't know why we did that. So now that we're going to have a physical Superman in that show, it is going to hurt first season a little bit going back to it in a way, just because it'll be hard not to think, well, I wish they'd cast him in the first place, or written him off world the whole season, or something. But again, beyond the fact that it's gonna make first season look a little bit silly, I think. It's a smart move to bring people in and to try to keep folks that are there already, because you can't, I think it's going to be undeniable for a lot of people. We want to see what their version of Superman is like and see if it's consistent with that grand, larger-than-life Superman that we've had in the background. The big question, of course, is who's going to play him, and like I said, this is a big risk. A lot of people are saying they want to see Tom Welling, and I have done a Captain's Log about this very topic before, talking about who I think should play him and talking about the idea of Tom Welling on this show. I still stand by what I said before. I would like to see Tom Welling in the show, but I want to see him as the Smallville Clark. And now that we have Supergirl very much roped into the CW multiverse, and considering that it's on that network and we know we're going to get a giant 4-show crossover at the end of the season, I still really want to see a backdoor Smallville reunion with Supergirl. And so I think it would be a missed opportunity if you cast Tom Welling in the role. And some people want this so badly that I'm seeing people in comments and threads trying to finagle it so that he can be the Smallville Clark and still be the Superman for this show. We don't need that. Let's cast I think they should cast someone brand spanking new and have this version of Superman, so that we're not tying it to any other version. Our Supergirl is an original Supergirl for this show. Melissa Benoist. I think their Superman probably should be as well. I think they need to make sure and cast a little bit older, make sure that he's in his mid-30s, early 40s, because we know we have a really established Superman. And sure, Tom Welling is the right age for that now, but again, I still say that would be a missed opportunity. I also said in that video that I would like to see Brandon Routh maybe do it. I'm going to change my tune on that now, especially since it's at CW and he's already playing a character there. And I got a lot of comments where people were like, well, it would be too confusing for people. Being on the same network, and now that Supergirl is in the Flash Arrow multiverse, I completely agree with you. I think it's maybe not such a good idea to do that now. I'm also seeing a lot of people saying that they would love to see all of the Superman alum actors all together now in the same scene somewhere, and that would be really cool if you could get Tom Welling and Dean Cain and Brandon Routh. And so the more I'm thinking about it, the more I think that we really probably should just cast somebody brand new that's right for the part. And so I'm not going to fan cast this. First of all, I'm no good at that. And second of all, I'm not sure who that has never played the role would be right for the role. But that's what I want to see. I think that would be probably the way to go. I'm really excited about this news. I think that's really neat. It's going to be really interesting to see what the flavor of the show is like on the CW, and if that changes at all. I'm sure I'm sure the strategy is going to be to try to make it feel, of course, like exactly the same show. It is the same show. It's just that they're having to shoot in Vancouver now, and so there will be some inherent changes in doing that. Back to the Cat Grant thing. If Calista Flockhart is not able to be in every episode, I don't think that that's necessarily a big problem for. I don't think that necessarily will destroy the show or anything. She's got to be there. Catco is a major set. That's where our Supergirl works. But with the setup at the end of last season of Kara getting to pick her own job and getting an office and no longer being Cat Grant's personal assistant, I think it would be really easy for her to not have to be in every episode anymore, because because Kara's not going to be working directly for her anymore, and so she wouldn't have to be as in the limelight. And the show got me much more interested in that character and liking her, which I was really impressed with it for doing. And so I'm not saying that I want to see her totally written out, and I think that would be detrimental for the show. It would be a pretty glaring thing, and it would be weird. I don't know how exactly you would do that in any sort of an organic way. But I am glad that the writing staff is remaining the same. I think that show has some really good writers. I hope that they're careful not to go the way of Arrow Season 3, and forgive me folks that really liked it, but Flash Season 2, I think it had major missteps, and by the end of that season, it felt like it never had a plan with Zoom, and I found all of that really disappointing, and it seemed like it was making a lot of the same mistakes that Arrow has made. I hope Supergirl is careful not to go in that direction, and I was starting to see inklings of it at the end of last season, maybe more than inklings, given that it's another big bad that we're not sure how to write ourselves out of. And once you get to the end of that season, there's some big glaring remaining things that we're just not even dealing with. I still think it's hilarious that we've got a whole army of Kryptonians that we just kind of forget about, and that show seemed to be above that sort of thing, and then it went there, and then I had to remind myself, oh yes, same producers as the CW shows. So I'm concerned that it's going to turn into just another really lazily plotted superhero show that I'm supposed to love just because it's got costumes and some decent special effects, and that it's not going to have any kind of an internal logic like Legends of Tomorrow and really both the other shows have to varying degrees kind of gotten to. But I also was worried about that because of the creative staff on NBC. I don't think that the move to CW is going to make that happen. I think it was already potentially on its way there. So I hope that those writers can continue to elevate it above the pack, and I also hope that those other shows just start to get wise to the fact that a lot of viewers are starting to get weary of these shows that don't actually really make any sense and that are playing themselves as serious dramas and are kind of, in my opinion, playing fans for saps. I still enjoy watching them for some of the performances and things, but I gotta say, they've gotten stale and they're, by and large, not real great shows, and Supergirl is still the best of them, I think, but besides Legends of Tomorrow, these shows have a tendency to start with a strong season and get kind of complacent, and I am really looking forward to seeing what they do with Superman. I'm glad that they have the that they're able to do that. I think a lot of us wondered if there were any sort of rights issues with the movies and stuff. There was some reason, because that kind of thing comes up all the time, that they weren't allowed to use Superman. If they... And being in 2 episodes is kind of an exciting thing, too. If he doesn't just show up for kind of an obligatory cameo, and it sounds like that's not what's going to happen, there's also every possibility that we take this Superman and we put him in that 4-part crossover, or in some sort of crossover at some point. It means that we could physically have Superman in the CW universe proper, in our Earth 1, and it would be really cool, even just for a visit, really cool for him to go there and inspire the Flash, inspire Green Arrow. I would love to see that. It also makes me wonder if there's any possibility that we could finally at some point see Batman in this universe. And of course, people always say that the Green Arrow is, and when I say this universe, I mean the Earth 1 of that universe, of the multiverse. People still say that Arrow is kind of a Batman show, but I wonder if there's anything precluding them now from doing that, since they're able to have a physical Superman in that show. Is it just because we have a thing called Supergirl, and so we have some kind of special arrangement where it's like, we can't have Supergirl with Superman existing in the universe and not actually show Superman at some point? I mean, a lot of people thought that they weren't even allowed to use his name at the beginning. We do say Superman at least once or twice in that pilot, but I saw reviews with that pilot where people were saying, wow, they keep avoiding using the name Superman, and it does show up a couple times, but it does sort of, I understand why people said that, it does sort of feel like they're avoiding it a little bit, and it was this weird thing where it was like, if you're not able to really say the name much or have the character in the show, why not just not have him there at all, or have it be a universe that doesn't have Superman in it, which is what I always wanted, where you do in Origin for Supergirl, and it's basically this Elseworlds thing of what if you didn't have Superman and you started with Kara. But anyway, since Superman is able to be there, I mean, I wonder if there were some kind of special arrangement, or if there was some sort of special arrangement, or if there wasn't, and it was something they were always able to do, and it wasn't a question of permission. And if that's the case, it may be that we finally could see Batman at some point. I think it would be really interesting to bring Batman into an episode of Supergirl and not the other shows, and again, maybe at some point do that, but to have kind of the contrast between Superman and Supergirl and Batman inside that really lighthearted, inspired by Superman kind of universe, or maybe even, introduce a sidekick for Supergirl to go pal around with, like she did with the Flash. Maybe have a Robin in that show. It feels like it might open the floodgates, like DC might get looser, because since Superman is in the movies and he's allowed to be in the show, or is it timing? Is it because, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this, is it because we killed off Superman in Batman vs. Superman? But I really doubt it, because surely Justice League brings him back right away. I would be really surprised if that had anything to do with this. And if it doesn't, it seems to me like it's possible that Batman could show up at some point. And I don't know that that's wishful thinking, because this wasn't a thing I was sure that we would definitely see. I didn't call this. I thought it would be weird to never actually show Superman in this show, but I also thought that after we did what we did with the two-part finale, that would be weird to ever have him. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't at this point. And I'm not saying after that, oh man, they should never show him. It's going to make first season weird, but I'm glad we're going to get to see it. It's going to be really interesting to see who plays him. And I think that's so smart of them. I think their ratings for that first episode are gonna peak pretty hard, just because you'll have Superman in costume on television for the first time in a lot of years. And yeah, you had Tom Welling in the suit in the last episode of Smallville, but beyond that, we haven't seen that in a very, very long time. So it's going to be, and even that was several years ago. So it's going to be neat to see it. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. Leave your comments, tell me what you think about this news or anything I mentioned in my ramblings in this video, and I will see you again with another Captain's Log on something else, I'm sure, in the not-too-distant future. I'm Captain Logan, and this concludes today's Captain's Log.